Hello, I'm Grand Haven Mayor Roger Bergman. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to Grand Haven City Digest. The video that you are about to watch should give you a little more insight into who we are at City Hall and what we're doing with your time and money. We do everything we can within our tight budget to inform the citizens and taxpayers of the business of the city. The business of the city is the business of the people, so please stay tuned and check back with us if you have any questions or comments. I thank the Grand Haven Area Public Schools for being our film production company. These videos are created by Dennis Threadgill and Haruki Shelton and a host of talented students. Working with our partners in education, we stretch our resources and present you with up-to-date, relevant content. Now sit back and enjoy this half-hour Grand Haven City Digest.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Grand Haven City Digest. Today we are pleased to bring you an episode about our city water system. We're here to speak with some experts about how our city water system is set up, how you get your quality water delivered to you from Lake Michigan. And we're going to hopefully fill in the blanks for those of you that don't know exactly how this service works and how our city water utility brings you fresh drinking water right out of Lake Michigan. Joining me today are Public Works Director Bill Hunter.
Pat.
Hi, Bill. And also City Council Member Mike Fritz.
Hi, Pat.
Hey, Mike. How are you?
Good.
Well, I'm going to start with Mike, and we're going to start right at the beginning of the cycle, and that is with Lake Michigan. Do you think the public has a feel for where their water is coming from through that sand filter?
If you lived here a long time, I'd probably say yes. But if you're new to Grand Haven, I don't think they have any idea exactly where the water is coming from. I mean, they turn their faucets on and it works. They don't understand that it's actually being filtered out there with the sand that we have in a bed underneath there, and the water comes down. It's pre-filtered before it even gets to us.
Okay, so this water is not like the water that, say, our neighbors from Grand Rapids or Wyoming are pulling out of the lake. It's done differently here in Grand Haven.
Of course, like in Grand Rapids and that, they suck everything out of there. I mean, it's just a big old open pipe out there, and they just kind of like suck everything into it, where we actually have it filtered and it comes in underneath there and comes in really nice. Their water is not the best. I've had friends of mine that come from Grand Rapids and tell me, man, your water is just top notch around here. They just like it a lot. They take bottles home with them.
So do you ever hear much from your constituents about water quality problems or issues with odor or taste?
I've never had any problem from anybody that said anything about on that order, except for the ones that they tell me about Grand Rapids and how bad their water smells and tastes. And I just tell them, it says, you know, you guys should probably come to Grand Haven then.
All right, well, there you have it, right from the City Council. We have the best tasting and smelling water in the entire West Michigan area.
Absolutely.
What do you think we can do, other than shows like what we're doing right now, to better educate our citizens and our customers about our water system?
Well, I think we can probably toot our horn a little louder. I mean, you get it out there in the paper, maybe promote water sales of our water to let them know exactly what we have. It's just, you know, this is a good start, but I think before we were talking about maybe a possibility of selling bottled water, that people know exactly how good our water really is. It might be a good point for us to start.
Okay. All right, so there you have it again, right from City Council. Drink all you want, we'll make more. There's added capacity, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Now I want to turn to Bill Hunter a little bit. There's a new water plant out there. I'm sure most of us have seen the construction there on Sherman in Grand Haven. What's going on out there? How much is it costing? Capacity issues, things like that. Can you tell me a little bit about the expansion?
Well, roughly the total price is $20 million, $14 million for expansion, $6 million for renovation. It's something needed. The plant's been there a little over 20 years. After a while, you just need to, the expansion part, you need to upgrade everything in there. I mean, that's just the bottom line, and that increases your reliability of the plant itself. The other one is the capacity. We have a lot of growth outside the community of Grand Haven itself, and that growth, we need to address that. And that's where actually the other communities we gather our reliability studies, and that tells us what our projected growth is going to be, which in turn goes back to the plant.
Okay, well, tell me a little more about these reliability studies. What exactly is that? It sounds like something that you know a little bit about.
Reliability studies, every 5 years, a community water supply is supposed to do a reliability study. And what it does, it tells you what you need to improve your system, tells you where you're going to be maybe in 20 years, projecting how much growth you're going to have. And they do this, a way they do it right now is actually through a WaterCAD model they do of your system. They do that, and that tells the engineer where your deficiencies are at, and then with other formulas, population, what your consumption is, will tell you a trending-wise where you're going to be at in the future. But yes, every community is required to do one in 5 years, and the engineers take that information, and that goes back to the source water, how much water we're going to need.
Okay, so who's requiring us to do this?
I'm sorry, that's the DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, Michigan Department of Environmental, which, I'm sorry, they go back to that March 1st.
Okay, so they're going to change their name back to the DEQ, and
Yes.
It's those guys that are and telling us for our very own good that you're going to need to expand or you don't need to expand, and sort of a certificate of need, sort of telling us that we're ready to expand and we need to add to our capacity. So that's what happened here in Grand Haven, and that's why we needed to add on to our capacity, but also renovate our work. So back over to Mike. Now it sounds like maybe us in the city and in the already developed areas, we were doing okay, but we had to grow to meet some growth outside our borders.
Yeah, they had the expansion to do that, but the thing is, the major expense of that is coming off for the expansion part, and the city of Grand Haven is actually doing most of the renovation. We put in our fair share what everybody else has on there, so it works out pretty good for us. Many years ago, before I was on council, there was a lawsuit telling us about how this is going to, the formulation that came about to get to where we are today is that they had, for renovation, it would be everybody takes care, but for expansion, whoever has the large expansion part of it would pay the biggest blunt, it would pay for the expansion part of it.
Okay, so the communities, the municipalities that are partners in the system that are experiencing the growth, they're paying for that growth.
Yes, they're paying for the growth on that, the expansion part of it. The $6 million for the renovation is paying out for everybody then.
Okay.
We pay our fair share of it. But for the expansion, the ones that need the water, they're expanding it, has a demand for it, will be paying the amount for that.
Okay, so we've identified that this system is made up of several different municipal jurisdictions, and you've mentioned that you've been here in Grand Haven for a little while. Initially, it was just a city system serving our own customers, and now we've grown out and expanded. How is that good or not good for the overall system, having that growth?
Well, having the growth like that, anytime you can expand and get more people into it, there's savings to be done. The fixed costs and stuff like that, the help, the work and stuff like that, you can spread out over a large area, it helps out. You know, anytime you can get more people into a system of any sort, we seem to find the economies of it to make it more affordable for everybody all around.
Okay, so that helps keep our rates down, which I think most of us water users appreciate. Anything we can do to try to keep those costs down. Now, if your constituents, folks that are watching right now, wanted to have a look around over there, what can they call somebody or get out there to take a look at the new plant?
Yeah, they can give Joel, Vanderstel a call at the plant and set up a tour, a time with him, and make sure they know exactly when it is, when they can get in there. He'd be glad to do that. It's always open. I mean, he's set times up for them to come. Great for school classes to come if they want to come over and go through that. Or if you have a group of people from your church or something that are kind of interested, or wherever you're from, you want to, give him a call and set up a time limit. And, he'll be glad to take you through there and show you how it actually works.
Okay, well, that sounds like another great way that we can try to get people more educated about their water system and how things work.
I think it'd be a great thing for them to do, because people don't really realize what all goes through when it comes through getting drinking water. It's quite a process for them to go there, so I'd be glad to have them go there and give them a call.
Okay, great. So members of the public, our customers, can come down and get a look inside the plant. Do you get the feeling as you're getting around town and talking to people that the public has a general strong confidence in the quality of our water here in Grand Haven?
Oh, I full-heartedly. I mean, after reading some of the articles in the paper from other towns and what's happened with their systems, and I've had people tell me saying, boy, I'm sure glad I live here in Grand Haven because we have such a quality plant and a quality, people running it, so it works out really good. People are very, very happy with what we have.
And how about when the water leaves the plant? We've got this whole elaborate distribution system that we'll be talking about in just a minute. Do you think the public's aware of the nature of that system and the critical condition that that's in?
Somewhat, but I don't think they have a real good grasp on it quite yet, how bad some of the areas really are. They know that we're working on it. Since I've been on council, we've been working on it for like the last 7 years. We've been going pretty hard trying to get our infrastructure in line and getting new water lines out there, new sewer lines and stuff on that order, trying to get things. I mean, if you read in the paper, you see other towns that are just struggling to get where they're at, and we're way ahead. We're ahead of a lot of other towns, so I can say that we actually look forward more than we have looked back. So we're doing very well at it, but there's still a lot more we have to do with it. And I think most of the people do understand that we're trying our best to move up forward with it, and they can understand that much of it.
Now, I know you like to walk your dog around a lot. We see out there that big bear. Have you ever come across a water main break or a problem going on with the system, and can you share any anecdotal stories about things that you've seen?
Oh, through the years, yeah. I've been here 57 years now, but not too long ago, maybe a few years back, just down the street from me on Clinton Street, we had a water main that broke, and the water went right on down Harbor, right on down in to the parking lot down by WGHN, and right in through the front doors of it. Because the main broke, and it's one of the major mains, a lot of water came out of there. So it tells you that not only just one area, how it affects, because we're on a hilly area here, depends on where the water main breaks, it can do a lot of damage in that. So it's very proper that we get things in line and make sure we have a good system working here for us.
Yeah, I remember that break, and it seems that it happened just a few weeks before we had an election on the ballot. So we got some great airplay, some great radio play about our terrible water system right before we had that on the ballot for a vote. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your perspective of ongoing digging up the water line and frozen ground and fixing it, covering it back up over and over again versus the economy of tearing up a whole road and replacing that water main.
Well, a good example is if you have to tear up into the street and do a patch repair there and then do another patch repair, tear the street up and do it. It's better off to put it all new in right away and get it done and over with so we don't have to keep coming back to that same area and just keep adding to it and adding to it. And now you got a whole bunch of patchwork sitting there instead of a nice clean line coming through. So the economies of that would be saying, if it's really that bad, let's move forward, put all new in, and don't mess around with just doing a small patch. Let's try and get that taken care of in that area.
Okay, so is it safe for me to assume, and I'll just ask you rather than have to assume it, does infrastructure repair and reinvestment in the foundation of our community remain a priority for you and your fellow elected officials?
Yes, I would say it's one of our high priorities. Since I've been elected on here, that was one of the main things I noticed in my town was that it was pay-as-you-go type things that we used to do before. If it was broke, we just fix that area and we wouldn't try and do anything else. And since I've been on there, we've been trying to stress to the public is that it needs to be more than just repair. It needs to be replaced. A lot of this stuff is old. Some it's 50, 60, some even a lot older. It's quite a few years old. So it's time for us to get in there and get it taken care of right away. So I think we're doing a good job, and it's as being an elected official, is that we definitely need to move forward on it and make sure our town is in good shape.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mike. And we're going to take a little break here, and then we'll come back and talk with Joe Vanderstel from our water plant. And I'll also ask Bill Hunter, the Public Works Director, a few more questions.
The city of Grand Haven celebrated its 175th birthday in 2009. It was ranked number 2 by the USA Today Gallup Happiness Index as being the hub of one of the most beautiful communities in the country. Grand Haven is a healthy, vital, and exciting community. The city provides a sustainable service package that is the envy of many small communities.
Being blind in this community is really, aside from the wonderful harbor transit that's there for us when it's raining, snowing, whatever, we now have some audible traffic signals at the boulevard, and we'll have them on some of our other made intersections soon that give us a much more safety when we do walk and cross streets. Now that's not, every community cannot say that. These are top grade audible signals.
The streets are safe and pothole-free, the parks are pristine, and the view of Lake Michigan is breathtaking.
I think it's just the comfort of living here. It's just a remarkable town. I think the government pays attention to what needs to be done. I think they continuously upgrade and remodel. I think the schools are next to none with their science Olympics that they win. Most often they're placed in the top in the nation. They have a wonderful fine arts program of music and art and things of that nature. And they excel in academics.
Our drinking water is drawn directly through the sand bed of Lake Michigan, the only direct filtration submerged intake system on the Great Lakes, and the taste is perfect. To learn more about the city, you can visit them online at grandhaven.org.
Welcome back to Grand Haven City Digest. Today we're talking about our water system and how we get water from Lake Michigan to you and your home in Grand Haven. Joining us today, I still have Bill Hunter with me, Director of our Department of Public Works. And now joining us are Joe Vanderstel, our plant manager at the Northwest Ottawa Water System.
Hi, Pat.
Hello, Joe. How are you today?
I'm doing good.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Joe, I'd like you to explain to our viewers how we get our water. How does it come into our plant, and how do we get it through our plant?
All of our water comes from Lake Michigan. We're blessed by being on the beaches of Lake Michigan and drawing all the water necessary for all the surrounding communities. The water that we do get from Lake Michigan is a pre-filtered water. We have two submerged intakes. They're actually infiltration beds in Lake Michigan near shore, and we're actually drawing water, Lake Michigan water, through that sand. So we're getting pre-filtered water before it comes to the plant. Now, we've been doing that for several years, probably since the early 1900s. And since we've been using that type of technique, we have been kind of practicing all along a direct filtration method. Typical, we look in comparison to, say, like Grand Rapids, Muskegon, Wyoming, and Holland, they're using conventional treatment. We have such great pre-clean water coming from Lake Michigan because of our submerged intakes that we can go to a direct filtration process. That removes some of the settling basins and some of the chemicals necessary to remove all the impurities, say like Wyoming and Grand Rapids has to do. So we are a direct filtration plant, comes directly to the plant. We do add a little bit of a coagulant chemical to it as a pre-treatment. We do put chlorine in the water for pre-treatment purposes, and then it goes through directly to the filters. We filter out all the impurities, and we send it out the door to the community.
Okay, just I was going to ask you to do it in layman terms, but I think you did a pretty good job of that, except for the coagulant chemical stuff. What exactly does that mean? Why are you adding that coagulant? What is that?
Well, with any waters that you get that are natural waters, I mean, I've talked about the pre-filtration process that we filter the water. The intakes are actually 12 to 15 feet below lake bottom. We still get some impurities. We do get some sand and some silt. So that does come to the plant. So we want to remove that prior to filtration. So we're using a coagulant, which is called aluminum sulfate, and that helps us kind of destabilize the water. It actually acts as a glue to stick the particles together. The larger the particle is, the easier it is for us to filter out the water, or filter out the impurities.
Okay, and then you take those impurities that you filter out, and do you collect those somehow and get rid of them?
After a certain amount of hours on a filter, and we have 8 filters in the plant, we run about 80 hours on a filter. We have to then take that filter out of service, backwash it, and remove all those impurities that are trapped on the top portion of the filter. All those impurities then we retreat. It comes off as more of a sludge concentration. Most of it's a precipitate of aluminum sulfate, and all the impurities, obviously, that we're trying to remove from the raw Lake Michigan water. But then we retreat that again. We go through a clarification process, put it in front of the process of the plant, and then we treat it over again.
Okay, and then it goes out in the system as
Yep,
drinking
leaves
water.
the plant as clean, fresh drinking water.
Now these submerged intakes under Lake Michigan, I know there's nothing that you can see out there. Is there anything you could feel if you were out there feeling the bottom of the lake and those things turned on? Would it pull your feet down to the sand, or is that?
No, the draw of taking water from the lake is very subtle because of the large occupied area of these intakes. They're around 240 by 260 feet. They take up quite a bit of area. They're rated at about 14 MGD, each of them. So no, it's a very slow process because of the amount of area that it takes place of. No, you would not get drawn into that intake.
Okay, so MGD is?
Million gallons per day.
Okay, very good. So the water is taken into the plant and very little treatment done to it.
Correct.
And then it's shipped out, each one treating somewhere over 14 million gallons per day, or I'm sorry, drawing that much into the plant.
Correct.
How much can the plant treat per day?
Well, we were rated at 12 million gallons per day production. That's when we first started in 1986. As time went on in the process in the plant, we became a little bit more, we optimized what's going on in the facility, and we moved up to 15 million gallons per day production. So we literally can put out 15 million gallons per day production to the surrounding communities, and that's all of Northwest Ottawa.
And that's with your new expanded plant, or that's before the expansion?
This is before the expansion. Now, the new expansion and the renovation that we're going through right now, we're hoping to complete very shortly, will get us up to about 23.25 million gallons per day production.
Okay, so we would really be interested in customers drinking a lot of water out there to help
Absolutely.
us pay for these improvements.
Definitely.
Okay, excellent. So how much water do you sell on average on a day if you're producing, or you can produce 15 or 23 million? What would you say on an annual basis would the average day be?
Average would be around 6 million gallons per day. It varies throughout the season. Obviously in the wintertime, we're only going to be putting out 3 million gallons per day. But when the summer comes around and we got a lot of tourists coming to beautiful Grand Haven and all the surrounding areas, we can go up to about 13 million gallons per day really quick.
Okay. Weather and weather conditions on the lake, do you need to pay attention to that? Does that affect how you get water out of the lake?
Really, weather does not affect too much of what we do at the plant because what I talked about before, we have that submerged intake. They're buried below the lake bottom. We really look forward to the days that we have a lot of wave action and wind action out on the lake because it helps clean our intakes. What we don't look forward to on some weather changing occurrences is that we have these very hot summers with very little wind on the lake. And obviously, the hotter the weather is, more people are going to use more water, and we have a little problem of a restricted usage coming off of those intakes. We just can't get enough through them. But we've been blessed for the last 3 years of going through the maintenance procedures and making sure that that doesn't happen, and we've been very successful with that.
Okay, and is this barge that we see out there sometimes, does that have anything to do with your intakes?
Yeah, it's part of our maintenance program. And every facility that you see always has some type of maintenance program. We have a marine contractor that will go out every 2 weeks, and we'll drag those intakes with an I-beam. And what they're trying to do is kick up all the silt that may be on top of where that intake is. And remember, it's 15 feet below the lake bottom, so we are getting some kind of a deposition of silt on top of the lake. And then he'll drive by on his barge there about 2 miles per hour, skipping an I-beam across the bottom, kicking up that silt so we can get more water into the plant.
So we couldn't just ask the public to shuffle their feet while they're down there? That wouldn't do the same
If
thing?
they can swim in deeper water,
Okay.
that would be great. That
Okay,
would be,
but meanwhile we're using the barge. Okay,
we're using
thank
the
you.
barge.
I want to talk to you a little bit about a few technical things about mercury. You know, I've read about mercury and mercury minimization. Of course, we don't want to have mercury in our drinking water. Can you tell me what that is and how it gets in our water and what you're doing to keep it out?
Well, part of the process for water treatment I talked about was using aluminum sulfate. It's a coagulant, chemical compound, but when they make the compound, there's impurities involved with making it. One of the impurities is mercury. So as I explained earlier, after a period of time, we want to remove those sediments and some of that precipitate of aluminum sulfate, and then we put it into the clarifier. We accumulate it by sludge. So those impurities of mercury are in that sludge. And we never had to really deal with that before until about 1997. I think the Wastewater Authority was directed by the DEQ at the time to look at their what's called I can't think of the name now.
PDS.
IPP. It's a
the Industrial
Pretreatment Program. So they were driven by the DNRE to look into that, and part of that was to reduce the amount of mercury coming to their facility. And we happen to be providing some of that through our sludge that we produce from the aluminum sulfate. So we've been on a fast process to bring that down, and hopefully with the new expansion and the renovation, we won't have to deal with that anymore.
Okay. We earlier had Mr. Mike Fritz on here from City Council. He told us a lot about the water quality and the perceived quality of our water and how the customers are very happy with the water quality. And I think those customers also have a presumption that there's somebody keeping an eye on us, that there's some regulation going on. Can you tell us how we're regulated, who regulates us?
Well, obviously we're regulated by EPA. EPA has definitely given us, direction of where we have to go with other, standards and things like that. But the primacy is given to the state of Michigan, which is the DEQ. I would say 90% of that goes through the DEQ. There's a small portion that we have to abide by the EPA, but basically we go through the state of Michigan, and they make sure that we stand to the standards that we have to.
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being very well regulated, we're probably at an 11 or 12 with state and federal oversight.
Absolutely. They do a very good job, checks and balances, and they're making sure. I send out on a monthly basis an operation report, and they're making sure that we're putting out safe drinking water.
Okay, and you yourself, you're educated in the Michigan public education system, Grand Haven High School, of course.
Yep, graduated.
And then you also got further training at?
I went to Lake Superior State University, and then went to Grand Valley State University.
Okay. So you're a biologist, a scientist, a chemist, you're all those things.
Background was mostly water quality, definitely.
Okay, so we're very lucky to have you, Joe, out at the plant taking care of our water. Describe your lab a little bit. What do we have in terms of a lab, and what don't we have to look after our water?
The lab is just a basic water lab, chemistry lab as far as water chemistry, but we are certified for bacteriological testing, which encompasses total coliform testing and E. coli. So we're testing the drinking water. We're also testing the water within the facility, even prior to filtration. But we encompass all of Northwest Ottawa, and all of our communities bring the water samples to us, and we actually do the testing for them. So no, we're not sophisticated. We don't get into a lot of metals and pesticides. Most of those things that we do test for, we have to because it's regulation. We will send those out to a certified lab to do that work.
And that's usually in Grand Rapids then that we would
Grand Rapids, we have them up and down the lakeshore. There's plenty of private labs that we utilize, but I have to go on record by saying we do have great water quality. We've never had any problems with any of those things. And I've been here a long time, so it's 26 years and I've never seen it. So.
And I know that you're also doing some proactive thinking down there, some strategic planning. And you use too many acronyms, we all do, but tell me what the SWIP is and why we have one.
SWIP is, there's actually it's one acronym, but we can cover two different areas for that. Surface Water Intake Protection Plan or Source Water Intake Protection Program. Both the same. And what that does really relates to protecting our source water, our intake water, our drinking water. And we know about the Grand River. It's one of the largest tributaries in the state of Michigan. So watching the watershed and the water quality is really important to protect our intake. So we've been on a fast track to work with this SWIP. We put that together last year. It's only a year old. And we're going to be looking at getting a steering committee together with some of the officials around the area. We might pick on the Environmental Natural Resource Committee. But we're going to try to get out there and do some public education about our SWIP plan and just make everybody aware that it's very important to protect our source water.
Okay, well, thank you. And I want to make sure everybody's also aware that the federal government and the state government are not very considerate when it comes to these acronyms, because now I'll turn to Bill, and where Joe's got his SWIP that means two different things. Bill, you have a SWIP-E.
Yes,
which
correct.
is something completely different?
It's completely different. Well, it's different but the same. SWIP-E is Stormwater Pollution Protection Plan Initiative. It's a plan that's put into place for communities to abide by their MS4 permits that's issued by the state of Michigan. But in a nutshell, it does the same thing as the SWIP-E. It's the SWIP plan. It's to protect your source water. There's a lot of mechanisms in there For example, there's timelines required for communities to set goals, to do things, for example, pre-wetting of salt, to minimize salt scatter during the winter. Another thing is probably to come up with new ordinances for developers coming in, to make sure that these developers, when they come in, they're not sending pollutants downstream. So there's a lot it's a big plan, but in a nutshell, it does the same thing.
Okay. So yours is about stormwater planning.
Stormwater Pollution Prevention Initiative.
Okay, so, and yours is source water or surface water. And they're in the SWIP and the SWIPPY. And the programs we hear about to reduce pharmaceutical dumping into the waters of the Grand River and Lake Michigan, that would be maybe both.
Yes.
Okay, so they are compatible in many ways. And maybe that's why they gave us almost the same darn acronym. Because it took me a few years to understand with you guys with your SWIP and SWIPPY that you were talking about two different things. Tell me, Bill, how many, getting away from the plant and back out into the water system, how many miles of water main do we have running under our streets in Grand Haven?
We have 85 miles of water main just in the city of Grand Haven.
Okay, and I know from some of the projects we've done to replace a mile of water main is some hundreds, if not maybe into seven figures.
Yes.
When we're talking about the cost of that. So as far as the magnitude of the value of this system underground, it's $100 million or something worth of infrastructure, just water lines. How many, do you know how many customers we have tapping that?
We have 4,700 customers. Okay. And that's customers, and we define a customer as the meter. So we have 4,700 meters out there. So you might have 2 meters per one location. You might have 6 meters per location. It might be a condo, for example, or.
Okay, but it's safe to say we have several thousand, probably in excess of 4,000 private service leads coming off these 80-some miles of mains.
Correct.
With everyone with valves and elbows and everything else that would be involved, and some of that in the right-of-way, some of it on private property.
Correct.
Okay, but quite a network. And of course, interspersed with all this, we have stormwater lines and sanitary sewer lines and
it gets pretty crowded underneath the
gas
street.
lines and
And now you're looking at electric going in there. It's pretty crowded. And that being said, the design, and that's why people think, well, just throw it in the ground. Well, you have the design of the water's got to go here, but it's got to be 10 feet away from this, and it's got to be 10 feet away from, so you have it 10 feet away from sewer, 10 feet away from storm. But also now I have to keep the other one in place because I don't want these people to go without water while there's a lot of, it's tricky. It's especially tricky in an existing system because you're designing around what's existing and still trying to get a quality product. It's easy to pick a chunk of land and that would be perfect, but in Grand Haven we don't have that luxury. But I think the engineers and the staff we do a great job actually of the projects. There's a lot of review. This doesn't come just like that.
Nothing comes easy, especially when you're doing it right, and I know you guys are doing it right at our Public Works Department. The problems that we have when we have older water lines that are periodically rupturing and giving us immediate concern, how does that impact the rest of our operations as a city Public Works Department?
Well, first thing is when we get a call, there's a water main break, we drop everything. That's whatever we're doing, we drop it because it's your system. Depending on the area too, we have certain areas in Grand Haven that are critical areas by hospitals. For example, the hospital would be a critical area, but we drop everything and immediately we're out. And actually, we drop everything even if it's plowing. It's what we have to do. It's the water is that important. There's a lot of people depending on it, so it does affect us. Us quite a bit.
So even beyond the obvious, which drinking water is so critically important to all of us, quality drinking water reliably delivered to our homes all the time without any interruption in service, and nobody expects that. The problems we might have with the system can make it tougher for us to cut the grass in the parks, to plow our streets, to do all the other things that we count on our Public Works Department for.
Yes. And the big thing is, fire protection too as well. Fire protection in the areas. You have an area down and it might be a critical area. You have to get that repaired quickly. Fire protection is a big thing as well.
Okay, sure. Final question for you, Bill. What is your annual budget for flushing hydrants, fixing mains, doing the different emergency work? What do you spend a year?
It ranges between $330,000 to $360,000.
Okay.
And of course, with an older system, you might have more in the repair end. But all in all, that's about what we've been averaging.
Okay.
Pretty good. But in that, it includes exactly what you said: flushing, maintenance on hydrants. Separate from that is meter reading, and another separate category we had was administration. So.
Okay. The water in the system, I know I said it was the last question, but I want to get one more thing out on the table. Explain that the water, the dynamic, how it always moves, that we can't have it sitting still.
There's different systems. We have in Grand Haven is a loop system, which means the water leaves the plant, and Joe's got high pressure pumps that are pumping in. Let me back up for a second. They actually fill water tanks. We have 2 water tanks at the top of the hill in Mulligan's. We have a 2 million and a 500,000 million. That actually hydraulically pressurizes your system. That water comes down and it's distributed in a network, a grid network. So constantly the water, depending on where it's drawn, it's coming from 2 different directions. We do have some areas, they're called dead ends, where for just physics, we could not get a loop. So that's where we might have some issues, but very rarely in Grand Haven taste issues because the water isn't moving. It is a water quality plus fire protection with the loop.
The reliability issue.
The reliability issue. If you have a loop, you're going to double or triple your fire flow. So that is another reason why. But that's it. It's a grid system. It looks like a box, and you can go out, and we have few dead ends, but we do have some.
Okay, and we're always looking to try to eliminate those dead ends and connect them in. Correct. Keep that loop, keep that water moving, and then it's fresher and better for everybody to drink and use for fire protection, as you pointed out. Yep. One item I just want to touch on before we break away here is the big blue water tank on the hill down by the YMCA is our backwash tank. And that is used to flush water out through our intakes to keep those clean. Right. And we'll be replacing that this year as part of our plant rehabilitation.
Yeah, second phase of that this project coming up will be addressing that backwash tank, plus some other issues with piping and stuff like that, and out at the lake station. But we will be removing that blue backwash tank, and before we do that, we're going to put in a brand new backwash tank. It's going to be a pre-stressed concrete tank, same size, right adjacent to the water plant.
Okay, so that big blue one's going to go away in the next couple of years.
It's going to go away.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll all be sad to see that go. I want to thank our guests today. We had Bill Hunter, our Director of Public Works, Joe Vanderstill, the manager of the Northwest Ottawa Water System. Mayor Pro Tem Mike Fritz joined us and talked to us about his perspectives on the water system. And I know I, for one, feel very confident and very comfortable knowing that our water system is being well looked after, well planned for, and well regulated. So thank you for joining us for this edition of Grand Haven City Digest, and I hope you have a great day.